My name's Daniel. I'm 28, and I've never really been the favorite. Not in that bitter, self-pitying kind of way, just in the quiet, persistent truth that settles in over years of being sidelined. My sister, Amelia, is 2 years older. Blonde, bubbly, valedictorian turned marketing exec who always got the loud applause, the extra scoop of dessert, the you're going places pep talks. Me? I got, at least you're trying. Growing up, it was always her dance recitals, her birthday bashes, her achievements hung up on the fridge while mine collected dust in drawers. I didn't resent her exactly, it wasn't her fault. But I noticed. Of course I noticed. Still, when she called me 8 months ago, voice sugary and breathless, to say, "Danny, I'm getting married. I want you there," obviously, I said congratulations like a good brother. I asked the date. I booked time off work. I mailed a handwritten RSVP. I even asked if she wanted help with anything, thinking maybe I'd be asked to usher or do a toast, or at the very least sit somewhere among the people who actually knew who I was. "No need," she texted later. "Just show up and enjoy. We've got everything covered." The exclamation mark annoyed me more than it should have. But whatever. I figured it was her big day, her moment, and maybe for once, I could just play the part of the supportive brother and not overthink it. The wedding was at some country club outside the city, ivy-covered walls, swans in a pond, that kind of place. I wore my best suit, pressed shirt, even polished my shoes. I bought a card with a quiet quote about love, wrote something thoughtful, and tucked a $5,000 check inside. It was a big gift, I know, but I'd recently gotten a decent bonus from work, and despite everything, I wanted to do something meaningful, to show that I was showing up, that I mattered. The moment I stepped into the venue, though, that old feeling crept back like a draft through a cracked window. Everyone was dressed to the nines, laughing and clinking glasses. I recognized a few of Amelia's college friends, her in-laws, even her high school chemistry teacher, but not one person looked my way. No smile. No nod. No, "Hey, you must be the brother." I figured maybe they hadn't seen me. I made my way to the card box by the guest book and gently slid the envelope in. A little internal moment of pride. That would help with the honeymoon. Maybe a down payment. Maybe something they'd tell stories about later. Remember when Danny gave us that check? That really meant a lot. And then I looked for my seat. Rows of tables, white linens, gold-trimmed place cards, fine china. I scanned for my name. Nothing. I checked again. Still nothing. That prickly heat started creeping up my neck, the one that makes your ears feel hot when you realize you've been overlooked. I tried not to panic, assuming maybe my name was under a middle name or misspelled. Then a server, kind, but visibly busy, glanced at my puzzled expression and said, "Oh, the overflow seating is over there." "Overflow?" I asked. She pointed to a small round table by the exit door. One stool. No linens. No place card. No meal. Just a sad glass of water and a flickering candle that looked like it had been used already. I stared at it like it was some kind of joke. But it wasn't. It was my seat. I approached slowly, trying to tell myself it didn't mean anything, that maybe they ran out of space, that someone would come and explain. But as I sat, if you could call perching on a wooden stool sitting, I started to hear the whispers. "Who's that?" "I think that's her brother." "The backup one?" I turned slightly and caught the eyes of her new husband's aunt and uncle. They didn't even flinch. Just turned back to their shrimp cocktails and kept talking like I wasn't there. I looked toward the head table. My parents were front and center, smiling, beaming, taking selfies with Amelia like she was royalty. My dad, who once forgot to pick me up from school because he was too busy proofreading her college essay. My mom, who used to tell me I should try smiling more, like Amelia did, so people would want to be around me. I stared at the flickering candle again. $5,000. I had walked in here thinking maybe, just maybe, this was going to be a fresh start. That my presence, my gesture, would matter. That I'd finally feel like part of something. Instead, I was seated like a waiter on break, ignored like background noise, whispered about like I was some awkward footnote in my sister's fairy tale. I stood up. No one noticed. I walked back over to the gift table. Still no one noticed. I opened the card box, slipped my envelope out, and tucked it back into my coat pocket. Still quiet. Still invisible. Until I hit the hallway, halfway to the front doors, and I heard it. A sharp, high-pitched voice behind me. "Where is he?" I paused. It was Amelia, and she was furious. That's when the murmurs turned. Footsteps behind me. Her voice getting closer, louder, sharper. But I didn't turn around. Her heels clicked violently against the marble floor, each step like a warning shot. I didn't rush. I walked at a measured pace, straight through the foyer, past the floral archway they'd set up for photos. I heard my name once, Daniel, sharp, slicing through the clatter of silverware and soft music. Then again, more urgent. Daniel, what's wrong with you? I turned only when I reached the front doors. There she was, in full bridal glory. White satin dress flaring out, hair done in intricate curls, a veil draped behind her like a pageant sash. But the look on her face? It wasn't grace or poise. It was rage. Her cheeks were flushed, not from champagne, but from fury. Her eyes locked onto mine like I'd just committed treason. You can't just leave, she hissed. What are you doing? I raised an eyebrow. Didn't realize I was supposed to stay. She stormed up, glancing around as if trying to keep her meltdown somewhat private. You left your seat. You mean the stool? I asked, voice calm. By the door? No meal. No name tag. No one spoke to me. Not even you. She blinked, thrown off by the composure in my tone. I didn't think you'd care, she said finally, as if that excused it. You didn't think I'd care about sitting alone at my sister's wedding? With strangers whispering that I'm just the backup. Her jaw clenched. You're being dramatic. It was just a mix-up. We had more people RSVP last minute, and you put your husband's cousin's boyfriend at the main table, I said, cutting her off. But I get the folding stool near the fire exit? She tried to laugh it off, fake and brittle. You're making this into a thing. It's my wedding day, Daniel. Can you not be like this for once? That hit harder than it should have. Not because of what she said, but because of how easily it rolled off her tongue. Like I was always the problem. Like I'd spent my life walking around with a storm cloud above me that ruined her sunshine. That was the story, wasn't it? I was the quiet one, the moody one, the awkward brother who didn't fit into the family Instagram grid. I gave you a check, I said quietly. A gift. $5,000. Her eyes narrowed. You what? I tapped the inner pocket of my coat. Past tense. I took it back. Now her composure cracked. You can't do that. Funny, I said. I thought the same thing when you gave my seat to a stranger and made me sit by the trash can. She sputtered, actually sputtered, like a cartoon villain choking on her own script. It wasn't about you. Why do you always have to make it about you? I didn't, I said. That's the point. I spent years not making it about me. Sitting out, shrinking down, letting you take the spotlight, the praise, the support. And all I ever asked for was a little space at the table. Today I got a stool. I turned back toward the door, but her voice followed, shrill and shaking now. You're ruining everything. We were going to use that for the honeymoon. I stopped in the doorway, looked over my shoulder. Then maybe ask the boyfriend of your husband's cousin. He's got a great seat. I'm sure he'll chip in. And with that, I walked outside. The cool air hit me like a wave. For a moment, I just stood there, breathing, letting the noise of the wedding dull behind the thick wooden doors. The valet gave me a strange look, but didn't ask questions. I handed him my ticket and waited, heart pounding, not with regret, but something else. Something lighter. My phone buzzed. First it was Mom. Where are you? You're being selfish. Then Dad. We need to talk. You're embarrassing your sister. Then Amelia. Unbelievable. You've always been like this. I put the phone away without answering. I didn't go home immediately. I drove aimlessly for a while, through winding roads, past fields and neighborhoods and gas stations. Eventually, I ended up at a diner I used to go to in college. Ordered a black coffee and some pancakes. Sat in a booth with cracked red vinyl, next to a jukebox that hadn't worked in years. I looked at the check in my coat pocket, still tucked neatly inside the card. The quote inside read, "Love doesn't make the world go round. Love is what makes the ride worthwhile." I'd meant it when I wrote it. I really had. I wanted this to be a bridge, a beginning. But you can't build bridges with people who treat you like a backup plan, like a placeholder. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the silence stretch. And then my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't a text. It was a photo, sent by a cousin, one of the few I actually liked. It showed the wedding cake, untouched. The band, pausing mid-song. And Amelia, standing in the middle of the dance floor, red-faced and frantic. Underneath, he'd written, "Bro, you broke the bride." I stared at it for a long moment. And then, for the first time in a long time, I laughed. The laugh didn't last long, just a short, breathy exhale over the rim of my coffee mug. But it felt good. Not gloating, not cruel, just cleansing. Like finally coughing up something you didn't even realize had been stuck in your chest for years. I typed back a simple response to my cousin. Guess she should have saved me a slice. No reply, but the read checkmark popped up instantly. Another message came in a few minutes later, this time from my mom. I can't believe you're doing this to your sister on her wedding day. I let out a short breath through my nose. The wording was textbook. Not she did this to you. Not even what happened. Just the same script I'd heard since I was a kid. You're the problem. You're ruining things. You're embarrassing us. I didn't answer. The waitress, a woman probably in her mid-50s with a kind smile and tired eyes, came by and topped off my coffee. Rough day? She asked, not prying, just genuine. I gave a small smile. Family stuff. She nodded knowingly. Ain't that always the kicker? I stared at the steam rising from the cup, thinking about all the years I'd spent trying to smooth things over, play peacekeeper, be the one who didn't make a fuss. Every birthday forgotten. Every holiday where Amelia got a speech and I got a nod. Every family photo I was cropped out of or asked to take. It added up. It built a wall, brick by silent brick. And today, that wall cracked. I didn't set out to ruin anything. I didn't walk into that venue with a plan. But when you're seated next to the emergency exit while your sister basks in a 6-tier cake and standing ovations, it stops being about politeness. It becomes survival. Another text popped up, this time from Dad. Come back and apologize. We'll work it out later. I stared at that one the longest. Not we're sorry. Not even we didn't realize. Just you fix it. That was always the pattern. They built the house, set it on fire, and handed me the extinguisher. I slid my phone face down on the table. For a long time, I just sat there, watching the people around me. A young couple sharing waffles in the corner booth, a group of teenage boys joking over milkshakes, an old man reading a newspaper with a stack of empty creamers beside him. Strangers, all of them. But I didn't feel invisible here. That thought stung more than it should have. About half an hour later, just as I was finishing the last bite of pancake, my cousin sent another message. A video this time. I tapped it open cautiously, not really sure what I expected. The clip was shaky and brief, clearly taken from someone's lap under a table. In it, Amelia was pacing near the sweetheart table, mascara streaked and mouth pressed into a tight line. Her new husband was trying to calm her, visibly uncomfortable. She just left, she was saying. He just left like it was no big deal. Does he even realize how selfish that is? The husband murmured something I couldn't make out. She snapped back louder. He thinks he can just embarrass me and then walk away with that check like it's a joke? Like I owe him. I paused the video there. Not because I was upset, but because the entire room behind her was dead silent. A room of people, many of whom had laughed politely when I was ignored, many who'd turned a blind eye when I was seated like a second-rate guest, now watching their flawless bride crack in real time. I imagined the looks on their faces. I imagined the whispers starting up again. I didn't smile this time. I just took a deep breath and flagged the waitress. Can I get the check? I asked. She nodded, scribbling something on the notepad before walking off. A few minutes later, she returned and slid the bill across the table. But when I picked it up, I noticed a post-it note stuck to the back. It read, "You deserve a better table. Coffee's on me." And that hit harder than any apology from my family ever could have. I left a 20 under the mug and walked out into the late afternoon light. Check still folded in my pocket, phone still buzzing in my coat. As I unlocked my car, another message came through. This one from Amelia herself. Just 2 words, "You're done." I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I slid into the driver's seat, turned the key, and pulled away from the diner with no real destination in mind. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove out to the lake an hour north, the one where our family used to camp when I was a kid, back before things got complicated. Before Amelia got her first modeling gig, and Dad started saying things like, "You should take notes from your sister." Back when Mom still packed 2 thermoses of cocoa instead of just one, and I wasn't treated like an afterthought. I parked near the edge of the water, cracked the windows, and let the quiet settle over me. No music, no calls, just me, the cool night breeze, and the flicker of moonlight dancing on the water. I slept in the car that night, didn't mean to, just dozed off watching the stars. And when I woke up to the sun rising over the lake, I realized something that should have hit me years ago. I wasn't mad anymore. I was done. Done trying to earn space in a family that kept shifting the goalposts. Done shrinking myself to avoid causing ripples. Done financing the fairy tales they wrote me out of. When I got back into town that morning, I took the check, still sealed inside the card, and drove to the bank. I thought about tearing it up. or mailing it back just to make a point. But instead, I deposited it back into my own account. My money, my boundary, my right. That same afternoon, I started blocking people. First Amelia, then mom, then dad, then the flying monkeys, the aunts, cousins, the family friends who'd texted some version of, "You need to apologize. It's not that deep." I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I didn't leave a dramatic exit message in the group chat. I just walked off stage mid-performance. And the silence that followed? Beautiful. It took a few days for the real fallout to begin. Apparently, the story that spread at the reception was that I'd stormed off because I was jealous. Amelia told everyone that I demanded to be seated at the head table and threw a tantrum when she declined. My mother, ever the martyr, cried to her church group that I'd humiliated the family and abandoned my sister on the most important day of her life. But narratives can only hold when no one pushes back. And I wasn't the only one who'd noticed how I was treated. That same cousin who sent me the video? He posted a photo of the sad stool by the exit on Instagram with the caption, "This is where they sat the groom's brother." Priorities. Comments flooded in, some passive-aggressive, some blunt. One read, "Wait, isn't that the guy who gave them 5K?" Another, "That's disgusting. You don't treat family like that." And then someone from the groom's side commented, "She spent half the reception yelling about a missing check. Maybe if she cared as much about her brother as she did about her gift, he wouldn't have left." The truth leaked out in bits and pieces. Turns out, Amelia's perfect image couldn't withstand much pressure. Especially not once people realized the guy they called the backup son was also the one who had paid for her first semester of grad school when dad refused. Or that the awkward brother was the one who drove 4 hours to fix mom's leaky sink last winter while Amelia was in Greece finding herself. I didn't correct the story. I didn't need to. The narrative rewrote itself. 3 weeks after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail. Not a text. A letter. Handwritten. From Dad. He said he didn't understand why I was being so extreme. Said family was about forgiveness. Said I shouldn't punish them for one mistake. But it wasn't one mistake. It was a lifetime of being overlooked, dismissed, used, and forgotten. One mistake you can forgive. A pattern? That's a choice. And I was finally making mine. I didn't reply, but I did make a call. To a lawyer. See, there was something else I hadn't told them yet. 3 years ago, after I started doing well at work, I bought a small rental property, a duplex across town. The bottom unit was mine. The top I rented to a nice couple. When mom and dad were going through a rough patch financially, I offered to let them live in the bottom unit rent-free for a while, just until they got back on their feet. 3 years later, they were still there. No rent, no contribution. And any time I brought it up, they'd say things like, "We raised you. This is the least you can do," or "You don't even use that money." Well, I'd been more than generous. And I was done being their safety net. The eviction process wasn't quick. It took a month and a half. I gave them written notice. 30 days. Not out of cruelty, but legality. I wasn't trying to hurt them. Just remove myself from the role they'd forced me into, the quiet little backup plan. They were shocked. Called me heartless. Said I was turning my back on family. But I wasn't turning my back. I was walking forward. With every week that passed, the silence grew louder. Amelia tried to rope people into messaging me on her behalf. She's having a hard time, they'd say. She really regrets how things went down. But I knew her regrets were about optics, not people. About the fact that her dream wedding would always be tied to a brother-shaped hole in the photo album. When the 30 days were up, mom and dad moved out. Into a one-bedroom condo that dad's sister helped them find. I heard they were bitter, embarrassed. Said they never expected this from me. That was the point. They never expected anything from me. At least nothing other than obedience, silence, and support. A month later, I hosted a dinner at my place. Just 5 people, coworkers, a couple of close friends, and my cousin, the one who stood up for me. We grilled burgers on the back deck, laughed until we cried, played cards late into the night. At one point, my cousin raised a glass. "To Daniel," he said, "for finally realizing you're not a backup. You're the main character." Everyone clinked their drinks. I smiled, really smiled. Not the tight one I used to wear around family, but a real one. The kind that stretches across your face before you even notice it. And when the night ended, and the dishes were done, and everyone had gone home, I stepped out onto my porch and looked up at the sky. I thought about Amelia's wedding, the stool, the whispers, the check. And then I thought about that diner, that waitress. The post-it. You deserve a better table. She was right. And I'd finally built one for myself. The guest list was shorter. But the company? Perfect. My name's Daniel, I'm 31, and for most of my life, I've been the quiet one in my family, the one who helps with moving day, who always replies, no worries, in the group chat, who everyone assumes will be fine with being left out, as long as they remember to invite me next time. I don't make scenes. I don't argue. I learned early that in my family, the loudest voice wins, and mine was never one of them. But that doesn't mean I don't notice things. I notice everything. My younger brother, Chris, has always been the golden child. He's 2 years younger, barely graduated college after bouncing between majors, and now works at a flashy real estate firm where he mostly just posts shirtless, closing day photos with clients and cashes in on charm. I took a quieter path, finance, long hours, no selfies. I bought my first property at 28, helped my parents pay off their mortgage after Dad's back injury, and even gave Chris a loan once to cover rent when he first moved to the city. But no one remembers that. What they do remember is that Chris makes people laugh, that he's fun and good energy. Meanwhile, I'm told I take things too seriously. This year, our birthdays fell just a few weeks apart. Chris's came first. I didn't expect much, but I showed up like I always do. They'd rented out a rooftop lounge downtown, decked out with silver and gold balloons spelling Happy 29th, complete with a photographer, catered hors d'oeuvres, and even a customized cocktail menu with drinks named after his greatest moments. They toasted him like he was a war hero. My mom gave a speech. My dad handed him a velvet box with a Rolex inside. Every man needs a proper timepiece, he said, beaming with pride. Everyone clapped. Chris winked and said, guess I'm finally the favorite for real now. I laughed. Genuinely, I did. Because I knew if I didn't, the room would shift. It always does. My birthday landed on a Tuesday. I didn't expect a rooftop or a Rolex, but I thought maybe dinner, maybe cake. My mom texted me that morning, happy birthday. Family dinner at 6, your dad's grilling. I thanked her. When I arrived, they were already eating. My name wasn't on the group chat earlier that day because, as my sister put it, we figured you'd just show up. I sat down. No decorations, no music, no speech. They brought out a single leftover cupcake, vanilla, the kind I don't even like, with a broken candle jammed into the center. My niece handed me a card with crayon drawings of a donkey on it. It said, congrats on another year of wasted potential. Everyone laughed. I didn't. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at it, unsure if it was a prank or some cruel family in-joke I wasn't letting on. My dad, seeing the look on my face, chuckled and said, relax, it's just a joke, unless you're still sensitive. I heard my sister whisper yikes, like I was the problem for not playing along. The moment hung heavy in the air. I took out my phone, snapped a photo of the cupcake, the card, and the table. No one noticed. I stood up, said I had to get back to work, and walked out. No one stopped me. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. But I drove straight home, heart thudding, ears ringing with every sentence I didn't say. I looked at the photo again. The cheap paper plate, the stained tablecloth, the half-drunk soda cans, and that card sitting dead center like a middle finger. That night, I opened Instagram and posted the photo with a caption that read, some birthdays come with champagne and Rolexes. Some come with leftovers and reminders you'll never be enough. Cheers to knowing the difference. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing. Old college friends commented things like, what happened? And, are you okay? My cousin, who lives across the country and rarely speaks to the rest of the family, DM'd me, this can't be real. Please tell me this isn't your birthday. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. By morning, the post had over 300 likes. I didn't even tag anyone, but the message was clear. That's when the call started. First, my mom, then Chris, then my sister. I didn't answer, but it was my Aunt Maria who finally snapped. She left a voicemail that started with, what did you post? And escalated into her screaming about how private family matters don't belong online, how I was making everyone look bad, and how people at church are asking questions. I listened to the message twice. Then I smiled. Because for once, they were the ones uncomfortable. For once, they had to answer for something. And I wasn't even close to done. I didn't respond to anyone for 2 days. I silenced the group chat, ignored the missed calls, let the messages pile up. They ranged from fake concern, are you okay, to veiled threats, you're really gonna burn bridges over a cupcake. Chris texted, dude, it was just a joke. Don't make it weird. I stared at that one for a while. The same guy who once forgot to show up to my college graduation brunch was now lecturing me on what was weird. I didn't reply. Instead, I made a few changes. First, I locked my Venmo and PayPal accounts. You'd be amazed how often I got, "Hey bro, can you spot me?" requests from family, especially Chris. I deleted every shared account they were using: Netflix, Spotify, the phone plan my sister was on temporarily since 2019. I changed all passwords, pulled my card from the Uber family profile, disconnected my Amazon Prime from my parents' login. It wasn't petty, it was overdue. Second, I cleaned up my feed. I made my Instagram public. I posted a carousel of old photos, me at Chris's birthday, clapping in the background while he opened gifts. A photo of me helping dad with the garage. One from the summer I drove my sister's kids to camp every morning because she needed help. I captioned it simply, "Just a few memories with people who always said they don't know where I got the idea they treat me differently." No names, no tags. But the comments poured in. Friends, coworkers, even a couple of my mom's old friends from book club. Some said things like, "This explains so much," or "Proud of you for speaking up." That afternoon, my sister finally broke. She showed up at my place unannounced, knocking like it was an emergency. When I opened the door, she didn't even say hi. Just walked in and said, "You're blowing this way out of proportion." I leaned on the counter, arms folded, and let her talk. She went on about how our parents meant well, how Chris's party was just easier to plan, how I always make things harder by not being as easygoing. Then she said something that froze me in place. "You always expect people to read your mind. If you wanted a bigger celebration, you should have asked." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that startled her. "I have to ask to not be insulted on my birthday?" She blinked. "It was just a joke." "You keep saying that," I replied, "but I don't remember it being funny." She rolled her eyes and muttered, "This is exactly why people don't know how to deal with you." And that was it. That was the moment I stopped trying. I didn't ask her to leave. I just opened the door and stood there until she walked past me, fuming. She didn't say goodbye. That weekend, I got a text from my mom. It was a long paragraph that started with, "You know your father didn't mean it that way," and ended with, "It's time to stop being dramatic." She added a smiley face, as if that softened the blow. But here's the thing about being the quiet one. When we finally speak, people don't know how to handle it. They're used to us swallowing the hurt, shrinking ourselves to keep the peace. They never expect us to push back. They never expect us to document everything. So I did something I never thought I would. I started writing. A blog, anonymous at first. Stories, memories, moments that shaped how I saw my family and how they never really saw me. It wasn't revenge. It was therapy. And people started reading, sharing. One post about being the family's emotional landfill went semi-viral. A local mental health advocate reached out to ask if I'd ever consider turning the post into a series or a podcast. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. A week later, my dad called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. It was short. "Daniel, enough is enough. This has gone too far. You're embarrassing the family." Then a pause. "You've made your point. We're waiting for an apology." The voicemail rattled around in my head for days. You're embarrassing the family. Not hurting them. Not disappointing them. Embarrassing. That word stuck like gum on the sole of a shoe. I replayed the message once, then deleted it. I wasn't going to respond. Not this time. Every bone in my body told me that the next move needed to be deliberate. No more passive silence. No more letting things slide just to keep a brittle peace. This time, I wanted the truth out there, not just in vague Instagram captions or anonymous blog posts, but laid out clearly with names, dates, and memories that never quite healed. That Friday, I booked a session with a local photographer. I wore the same button-down shirt I'd worn to Chris's birthday and asked her to replicate the lighting from the rooftop lounge. Then I held the joke birthday card in one hand and that leftover cupcake in the other. The frosting slightly melted, just like it had been. She snapped a dozen shots. On Monday, I posted the most striking one with a new caption. "This was my birthday gift from my family this year. After helping them pay off their mortgage. After bailing out my brother. After covering my niece's tuition deposit when my sister was between jobs." Not asking for applause. Just tired of pretending this didn't happen. The photo spread fast. People I hadn't heard from in years messaged me. High school classmates. An old boss. Even a distant cousin in New Jersey who'd cut contact with our side of the family ages ago. One message read, This is the most honest thing I've seen in a long time. Thank you. But the comment section, that was something else entirely. Hundreds of strangers chimed in, some sharing similar experiences, others expressing outrage. A few people, probably family friends under burner accounts, accused me of airing dirty laundry and being ungrateful. I didn't respond to them. I didn't have to. The community did it for me. But then came the comment that tipped everything over. Someone with a verified checkmark, an editor from a popular digital magazine, commented, "If you're willing to tell your story, our readers need to hear it. Check your DMs." I sat with that message for hours. Part of me hesitated. I could already hear the accusations, attention-seeking, dramatic, trying to destroy the family for clout. But another part of me, the part that had sat quietly through years of being overlooked, dismissed, and treated like a second-tier sibling, leaned forward and clicked reply. That's how the interview happened. They titled it, "The Invisible Child: What Happens When Families Forget to Celebrate Everyone." It wasn't just about my birthday anymore. It was about patterns, about generational favoritism, about what it means to be the one who always gives, but is never seen. I didn't name names, but I didn't sugarcoat anything either. I shared stories. The time my mom forgot to order my graduation photos, but framed my brother's. The Christmas where Chris got a new laptop while I got socks. The year I organized the entire family vacation, only for them to leave me out of the group photo because you were busy grabbing towels. The article dropped on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, it had over 200,000 shares. My inbox was flooded, and that's when the real fallout started. Chris called first. He didn't yell. He didn't swear. His voice was cold, flat in a way I'd never heard before. "You really hate us that much?" I didn't respond right away. I could feel his anger coiling, waiting for something he could pounce on. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I'm done pretending everything's okay just because it's easier for you." He scoffed. "Do you know how this looks?" I had clients message me about that article. Clients, "Daniel, you made us all look like monsters." "No," I said. "You did that yourselves." I just held up the mirror. He hung up. The next day, my mom showed up at my apartment. I didn't let her in. We spoke through the door. She tried to play the victim. "Do you have any idea what you've done to this family?" she said, voice breaking. "People are talking. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Your sister can't sleep. And your brother, he's humiliated." I stayed quiet. Then she said it. "You always were the ungrateful one. Not, 'We're sorry.' Not, 'We should have done better.' Ungrateful. Like everything I ever gave them, money, time, love, was just a down payment on silence." I finally replied, my voice calm but firmer than she'd ever heard it. "You gave me a cupcake and a card that said my life was wasted. And now you're angry because I finally agreed." There was a long pause. Then footsteps. Then silence. That night, my phone buzzed again. A screenshot, sent by one of my cousins. It was from the family group chat I was no longer part of. The thread was spiraling. My aunt calling me manipulative, my dad saying I'd brought shame to the family, and Chris threatening to sue if I ever mentioned him publicly again. But it was my sister's message that made me stop cold. "He's always wanted to be the victim. Let him have it. Just don't forget who helped change his diapers." I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt. Not anymore. But because I realized they didn't see me. They never had. And now, the world was watching. I let a week pass before responding to any of them. I needed time to think, to feel everything fully instead of stuffing it down like I always had. It felt strange to be seen. Really seen. Not by my family, but by strangers who'd read my story and reached out. Teachers. Therapists. Quiet siblings from loud families. One woman wrote, "I didn't know anyone else had a birthday like mine. I cried reading yours." Another said, "Your post made me call my younger brother just to say sorry. He was always the one who got left behind." And yet, despite all the messages of support, there was a low hum of dread in my chest. Because I knew what was coming. The final pushback. My father called one evening. It was late, later than he usually stayed up, and I answered, partly out of curiosity. There was no hello. Just a sigh, and then, "So is this who you are now?" I didn't answer. "You're throwing dirt on the family name. Dragging us through the mud. For what? Some attention from internet strangers?" I stayed quiet, letting him vent. "Your mother can't show her face at work. Your brother's thinking of moving to get away from the whispers. And you're just, what? Proud of this?" "No," I finally said. "I'm not proud. I'm just not ashamed anymore." He went quiet. That silence told me everything. He wasn't calling to understand. He was calling to scold. And I wasn't his obedient son anymore. "You've made your bed," he said coldly. "Don't expect anyone to help you lie in it." Then he hung up. The next day, I got an email from my landlord. Someone, an anonymous party, had submitted a noise complaint against me. Twice. I lived alone in a quiet unit and hadn't had company in weeks. When I asked for clarification, the landlord said the complaint described hostile-sounding Zoom calls and aggressive outbursts. It was laughable, clearly made up. But the implication was clear. Someone was trying to stir trouble. Then came the worst of it. One of my clients, someone I'd worked with for over 2 years, emailed to let me know they were terminating our contract. No warning. Just a vague, "We've decided to move in a different direction." I wasn't naive. I knew my family had influence. My dad still knew people in finance. My brother had friends in real estate circles. Whispers travel fast. It didn't take long before I connected the dots. They weren't just hurt. They were retaliating. But here's what they didn't count on. I was ready. All those years of being overlooked, underestimated, and written off had taught me how to prepare. I wasn't reckless. I had savings. I had a network now. I had a growing following. And most importantly, I had nothing left to lose. I called the magazine editor who had reached out after the article. Told her I was ready to go deeper. We scheduled a full interview video this time. I didn't hold back. I talked about the manipulation, the favoritism, the emotional debt they held over my head for every dollar they gave or received. I spoke slowly, with the kind of clarity that only comes from years of quiet observation. Then, I started my own site. Not a blog anymore, a full platform. The Quiet Ones, I called it. A space for people who had grown up in families where love came with conditions, where birthdays came with reminders that you weren't enough. I built it from scratch: forums, stories, even a submission portal for people to share anonymously. Within 3 months, the site had over 20,000 members. I started getting invitations to speak, podcasts, webinars. A few book agents reached out. I was careful not to become some caricature of trauma. I wasn't interested in turning my pain into a performance. But I knew this space mattered. I knew there were more of us than people wanted to admit. Then came the call I didn't expect. Grandma. She was the only one in the family I'd stayed in contact with, my dad's mother. She was quiet, sharp, and often overlooked, much like me. She didn't ask about the article or the site. She just said, "Daniel, I've been meaning to tell you something." I listened. "When your father was your age," she said, "he used to call me a burden. Said I'd never contributed anything. Said I was just another mouth to feed." I didn't speak up. I figured if I stayed quiet long enough, he'd respect me. She paused. He never did. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. Then she added, "But you didn't stay quiet. And I'm proud of you for that." It was the first time someone in my family had ever said those words to me. The final break with the rest of them came quietly. I was sent a group email, family updates. It included vacation photos, a note about Chris's new house, and a passing mention that my parents were redoing the will. My name was nowhere in the message. Not even a line saying "hope you're well." They had erased me. I should have felt hurt, or furious. But all I felt was free. The next time my birthday came around, I didn't wait for anyone to plan something for me. I took the day off, rented a quiet cabin in the mountains, brought my laptop, a few books, and a bottle of wine. I sat on the porch and watched the sun dip below the trees. My phone buzzed with birthday wishes from real friends, from people in the Quiet Ones community, even from old clients who'd become allies. There was no card that mocked my life. No cheap cupcake. No one telling me to relax. Just peace. And that's the thing about walking away from people who never saw your worth. You finally have space to become the person they never believed you could be. That was the year I stopped asking for a seat at their table and built my own instead.